Hello, this is Rico Cavella, and this is your Ageless Body Self-Care Guide, your operations manual for your body and your mind. And this episode, or rather not episode, this is in this training session is entitled The 4 Keys to Your Divine Purpose. And I think this is such an important one because the whole concept of this whole project is to help you learn how to take care of your body and mind so you can live a higher energy, more productive, higher quality life and go out and make a bigger difference in the world. So I think the biggest key is when you find your purpose, in particular your divine purpose, then you're going to want to take the very best care of your body as possible so you can live a longer life and live your purpose and make a bigger difference in the world. So we have a great guest today. Our expert is Dr. Philip Montrose. He and his wife are widely recognized pioneers and experts in the fields of holistic life coaching and healing. With about 3 decades of experience, Philip and his wife have fine-tuned their signature methods, which include holistic EFT, spiritual kinesiology, holistic hypnotherapy, NLP, and more. And so we're going to talk about your divine purpose today. So welcome, Philip Montrose.
Great to be here, Rico.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate
for inviting me.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming to share your wisdom and knowledge with us. So again, I just want to say that I think that, learning how to define your purpose in particular, I like what you have to offer, your divine purpose, that's the main purpose we want to know about. So this is going to be really good. So I really appreciate you being here. So let's just get started right off. My first question is, how do you define a divine purpose?
Well, we feel that there's kind of a blueprint here that we have, whether you discover it or not. It just depends how far you want to go with this lifetime of something you're here to do greater than just living your life and surviving, although that's certainly a part of it and actually becomes ingredients in your purpose itself. And years ago now, my wife and I, Jane, and my partner and I, we wrote this book called Getting Through to Your Soul, The 4 Keys to Living Your Divine Purpose. And we felt that was sort of the reason, the raison d'etre, as the French say, the reason for existing. And if you look at it, you could be very healthy, which is part of it, and be in great shape, and be a model specimen, whatever, having a great lifestyle, a healthy lifestyle, but if you don't have a purpose, if you're not doing it for something beyond yourself, it might be quite limited and ultimately at least falling short of the mark. It might be one of those things people regret at the end of their lives, that they didn't go beyond having, wonderful if they did take care of their body and live healthy, but no further. That might be a shortcoming there.
And I just want to add, for me, again, being a personal trainer all these years, I always wonder why so many people don't take better care of their physical body. And so I think this is key, that when you do discover your divine purpose, then you want to be around as long as you can and
Right.
Go out and make a difference in the world. So you realize you need your body to do this. So you're going to take better care of your physical body.
Right. And that's exactly true for me. I mean, I'm getting a little on in my years as you, and it's probably many people listening to this. And why do that? At a certain point, you realize part of going forward with your life, after you've done a lot of the basic things and have a lot of your basic needs met, is why do that? Because there's a reason beyond you. And if you have reasons beyond you, as I'm going to share and explain, you need a healthy body to do so. Because without that, then you're going to be just struggling to physically survive.
Absolutely. Well, let's go through those 4 keys. I'm really anxious to find what they are. The 4 keys to your divine purpose.
Right, the 4 keys. And before I start this, just a prelude to it, it reminds me of the difference between being happy, which is good, and having a purpose. And of course, the two overlap. There was a study years ago where it was for college students, and the one group, their goals were just to satisfy their needs, to kind of party and eat whatever they want and do feel good kind of things. And they would journal about that. And then there was another group that would journal about helping other people, meditating, volunteering, doing things that they felt they were contributing to others. And after a period of several weeks, they actually even did blood tests, and their immune systems of the ones who had the, I call eudaimonic, there's a term, Greek term of living kind of for a purpose. Those people who are helping others, contributing their even their physical signs, their blood pressure, their immune systems was stronger than the other group of this college students. I just wanted to mention that. It kind of fits in with what we were saying, as we are here in the moment, and that's part of being on purpose, being in the moment, as you know. So that was that moment, and now that's this moment. So, what are the 4 keys? Correct? That was the question.
Yes.
So, well, we came to this. Maybe I'll just start with how we got to this point, so people know a little bit where we are and how we came to this. Would that be okay?
Sure.
Well, years ago, Jane and I, my partner and I, we met in a spiritual group, a spiritual psychological group, and it was for awakening and things that would be related to purpose and spiritual growth and enlightenment and such. And even though this group had some wonderful ideas and spiritual connections, they didn't have kind of a deeper healing part. So there was a limitation of how far you could go to figure out what we ultimately termed this divine purpose. We had to leave the group in part because of that, because people were very repressed without emotionally expressing themselves and dealing with their feelings and emotional, well, it's now called self-regulation, as you know, where you manage your feelings and behavior, but that's part of actually the self-mastery and enlightenment, going further into purpose, which is so important if you're on the spiritual journey and trying to wake up like Jane and I were these years ago, and leading really a full life. So that's got us on this journey of these 4 keys that we wrote about in our earlier book, Getting Through to Your Soul, the 4 keys to living your divine purpose. So number 1, we're going through the 4 keys now, is understanding your soul. Now, a lot of people think this is a very abstract, obscure, impossible to understand concept. It's not a concept, it's a reality. Everyone has a living, breathing soul, whether you've recognized it or not. It becomes more evident in periods of like extreme beauty or stress, things that you remember that seem to take you out of time, beyond time, sometimes in the zone when you're doing something that's very thrilling and natural, and we'll talk a little more about that in a moment too. So understanding your soul came to be what we call the 7 stages of spiritual growth. Of as you go further on your path in your journey, we mapped out the spiritual stages, partly through teaching people this material, this Getting Through to Your Soul and healing and spiritual growth material in our trainings. And when we would be with people for a year, we'd see these marked changes and patterns, Rico. So the stages start with, well, the first one is just we call recognition, and they correspond to the chakras, as people may know where those are in the body, the 7 chakras, just as a side note. But anyway, so it starts with just sort of a basic recognition that there's something more than you. Just like as an infant child, you know there's more than you and your caregiver you connect with, and then a bigger world. It's very rudimentary. That's the lesson. There's sort of lessons in these stages. And this is taking us into how you get to your divine purpose here. So, and then the second stage would be renunciation, where you ultimately are part of a group, family, religion, etc., and you embrace them, but you renounce them in terms of going further into your own individuation, into the greater whole. And the third activation stage, the way we describe it, is empowerment, where you get your own power. And that's when people start to break off from the herd, from the status quo, from their family, what people do. And they might just do like a sabbatical or a change of outfits, or they shave their head, whatever. So there's something, hey, I'm going to explore, a different course, a different journey. I'll go on a spiritual retreat or whatever. So there's ways where you start to explore, you start to realize that you're not going to do what the group does. And that's why that's an empowering step. Now, here's where it gets deeper and even more interesting. The fourth stage, which the heart, we're in the fourth chakra, if you're tracking it by chakras here, is what we call embracing. And a lot of the people, especially we personally work with, are embracing the deeper parts of themselves. And Rico, this is when your life kind of no longer works. And sometimes it's that midlife transition or crisis in life and the stages of life, which is another map of your journey. So in the way we're describing it, you start to look at the wounded parts, the parts that feel dissatisfied, the often repressed or hidden parts, the parts that are shameful, sometimes called the inner child parts, the parts where you feel disconnected, fearful, doubtful, why you're so arrogant or so feel like a victim or whatever. And the individual patterns come out and you start to heal that. And that was that journey we were talking about earlier, Jane and myself in the spiritual group. And you start to heal those inner parts and inner wounds. And that leads to the next step, the sovereignty or the expression part, where you start to be able to express your truth, speaking your truth. You've heard that phrase. We've heard that phrase, probably people now it's beginning to get in the mainstream. So you're able to do that because there's enough integrity and inner consolidation of these wounded parts that are healed that you're able to be more on purpose and more able to express yourself and be with groups and have a bigger impact and be more aligned spiritually and more in the moment because there's not all this blockage and wounding and repression going on. And going further, you start to integrate that more into your vision, your sixth, we call it the sixth or integration period, where you start integrating it more into society, the way you interact in society as a whole, connecting with a bigger and bigger group and actually planetary and universal connections. And further, the seventh is a more knowingness, a more oneness, where you feel more, say, in the world, but not of the world. You're sort of seeing yourself in a more detached way. And that's kind of a rough map of understanding the soul's journey. And we sometimes talk about that as what we call the continuums of change, where you kind of have these markers or metrics where you see yourself becoming more and more conscious. In other words, are you more conscious of what you're saying and doing? Are you more of a resilient person, a more in the moment person, or are you more stuck in patterns and old patterns and just doing things in routine, unconscious, default ways? We sometimes call that kind of a set point, like where you're vibrating at, where you're normally functioning, what are your normal belief levels and feeling levels and awareness. And also another marker is how responsible you are for yourself. Are you taking more and more responsibility for yourself and seeing yourself less as a victim and more as a creator? And similarly, are you more in the subjective sense of your soul's truth? And we're going to talk more about that in the second key to the living your divine purpose. And there are other things too. Should I share kind of a brief story here to illustrate this?
Okay, sure.
Yeah. Did you have any comments or questions? I wanted to also let you in.
Well, I was just going to say this sounds like really the spiritual path that really everyone is on, whether they know it or not, and hopefully they're right on. And I all the time as you were talking, I was just thinking, it's too bad that younger people, and when we were younger, we weren't aware of this and started our spiritual right journey a little bit sooner, right?
Right. Yeah, and we had to find, well, I mean, the benefits for us, say, was that path where we were struggling, and there wasn't much when we were in our 20s, at our age, in my 60s now. So, but we had this spiritual group, and I told you the limitations, but because of the limitations, that was our next step, to explore some of this new ground and new territory that I'm sharing with you. So just a story of how this might work about someone going through these stages. There was a lady who wanted to take our holistic coaching and healing class years ago, and she came to our first class. This is when we were doing it in a physical, actually it was a home office at that time, our holistic coaching healing certification. She came, was kind of just checking it out, wasn't sure, and she started realizing this is what I was looking at. And her situation was, she used to be a successful lawyer, married a husband who was a lawyer, was raising her children, but was very dissatisfied And as she started to heal herself and open up, there was a lot of wounding in this difficult marriage. It was rather abusive. She really didn't want to just be, quote, a housewife taking care of children type thing. And she actually grew, and she left the marriage. She developed her own coaching, healing practice, and so forth. So she was able to heal enough of herself to get an expression of who she was. So
Yeah,
that's, sorry, do you want me to go on to the second key to living your
let's
core
go to
purpose of
second
the
key,
four?
but yeah, please.
So the first was understanding your soul, and the second is connecting with your soul, connecting, obviously. Now, as I said, a lot of people think like, wow, that's really must be an obscure thing that maybe once or twice or once in a while, once in a blue moon, you connect with your soul somehow. It's actually very common. And some people, with now meditation becoming more popular, realize that there is that soulful presence, perhaps, depending on how they meditate. And we teach different ways to do it. And I'll kind of take you through one and the listeners through one right now. And we recommend doing this regularly. We have descriptions of this on our website too, and how to do this as well. And this is a key to it all, really, because the more soul energy, the more soul connection, the more you advance on the spiritual path, and you actually consciously see and recognize yourself as the spiritual being in a human body, a spiritual being having a human experience. I forget the Teilhard de Chardin once said, the well-known sayings. So the connecting with the soul is breathing. One way to do it that we like to do is just breathing into your heart and relaxing your body. And as you relax and breathe through your nose and relax and let go, that relaxes your nervous system. And you have this pure, clear energy going into your heart. And then you relax again, breathing out slowly. And as you continue to breathe into your heart, everyone, Enrico, everyone, you might begin to sense or see, and with your eyes open or closed, that soulful presence. It may be an image or a sense of it. And it's a sense of expansion, a sense of awareness, a sense of acceptance. And as you open up even more, you can sense or imagine an opening above your head, and you bring in the consciousness, the connection with the whole universe, something we're always connected to, but now we are more consciously connecting in this moment. And as it comes into your whole body, heart, and your whole being, you have that sense of oneness and presence. You just kind of breathe that in and hang out there.
Yeah, I just want to add that that's similar to, I'm sure you heard of heart-brain coherence, where they've discovered that your heart actually produces and sends many times electromagnetic signals to your brain than your brain does to your heart. So when you do an exercise, just like as you mentioned, and just get into those states of gratitude and compassion and feeling of oneness, that actually really it calms down your brain and gets your brain all synchronized and coordinated, and then your brain can send those signals to your body for healing. So that's really good. It's a really important thing to do.
Yeah, so this connects your body and grounds your body for healing and wholeness. And as you said, the gratitude and kindness are qualities of the soul. So when you do it going back with a soulful purpose, rather than just having your body very coherent and relaxed, which is wonderful, but you need that as part of the bigger picture here. And it becomes like more meaningful and profound when you make that connection. And imagery can be a very useful thing, and images often come to mind. Let me just share one of a lady I was helping today, a client, just how beautiful it is, the soul's poetry. So when she went into this state, I helped her go into this state of connecting with her heart and opening, bringing it in like she has before. And she got into that different state. And what the issue she was working with to further her journey on her spiritual path or divine purpose was one of feeling perfectionistic. A lot of people where like things kept getting in the way, and like the image of the negative blocked image was all these boxes were in her way. So when she connected with her soul, Rico, this beautiful image came to mind that these are not boxes, these are actually clouds. So imagine they're clouds that can shift, and everything is very open and fluid and dynamic. It can be with other clouds, or the sky can clear up. And afterwards, you could just look at the sky. It could be a pure, clear blue sky, or there could be a cloud there. So that's a different way of leading your life than saying, oh, wow, you know, things aren't going the way I wanted. I was going to do this, but this obstacle came in the way. Well, oh, wow, it's another cloud. And I'm going to just observe the cloud, see where it goes, find the next path. So that was another expression, a way of expressing her soul through a soul centering. So that's connecting with your soul. That's one way of doing it. We teach other ways as well. And our website at gettingthrough.org/holistic has a lot of information and some ways of soul centering too, to go further in that part. So that's number 2, connecting with your soul. Any things you wanted to add to that, Rico?
No, I think that was really well expressed. So let's go on to number 3. Yeah.
3 is now becoming an expression of your soul. Isn't that a beautiful idea, becoming an expression of your soul?
Yeah. Again, I think that is our divine purpose, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's all interwoven, right? Interpenetrated. Good. Yes, I like that. So part of that expression is doing the healing work, as I said, as I'm kind of putting that through that opening and that energetic work where you don't feel whole. That's part of the journey. It's interesting, they're finding in childhood studies that infants are very disconnected from their parents or caregiver, but they keep reconnecting or repairing, like there's mismatches, they're looking or not looking, the mother is speaking in the way that the child receives or not, and they have to, so it's continual repairing and shifting. But of course, when there's a lot of separation or a lot of distance from the parent, caregiver, and child, that creates trauma. So going further, this learning how to self-regulate and figuring out how to do that, if you weren't as a child, you figured out, you go further into healing those wounds, but this way as part of your divine purpose, not just to function. Some people do it just to function, to be able to function and get by and survive, but as part of what you're here to learn and grow. That's kind of the fodder, the grist for the mill, the raw material, not where everything is perfectionistic, like my client was trying to have. So one of the, besides doing what we call spiritual kinesiology, which uses that soul centering for healing with muscle testing, we also do what we call holistic EFT. And a lot of people know EFT, the tapping technique, and we have our own kind of brand of it. And one of the things that we do, and this will help you become an expression of your soul, is something we call the miracle reframe with EFT, where you say a mantra, kind of a soulful mantra, calling anything is possible and miracles are happening now. So that's a little thing that listeners can do to say that. And they can do that with EFT tapping, which many people know of the tapping points, which I'm going through. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people know EFT. And while you're doing that, you can say anything is possible. As you're tapping the top of your head, and then your eyebrows, and miracles are happening now. And anything is possible, tapping the side of your eyes.
Phil, tell us real briefly how tapping works, and why does the tapping help?
Yeah, and this is one of the healing modalities. Tapping is a way of balancing the circuits. Say the tapping points are energy circuits or meridian points based on ancient Eastern medicine, what was discovered. So if you, instead of using needles like acupuncture, you touch them with your fingers, you're stimulating or balancing them. And what EFT does is balancing these key pressure points, like I'm tapping.
Right.
It's balancing if there's too much or too little energy, along with a saying. So if your mind is focusing on an issue or a block, but tapping the energy, it's balancing out the system. And this little phrase that we came up with, anything is possible, miracles are happening now, it opens your mind, doesn't it?
Yes.
And it allows things to come in. Instead of being very constricted, it opens in, like those clouds in that story I said, it starts to be very expansive and dynamic and fluid, and other things can come into your life. So becoming an expression of your soul is clearing those things. And let me tell you another story that's pretty fascinating, I think, especially with the COVID-19 at this time. I mentioned that we do holistic EFT on the one hand, and on the other hand, we do the spiritual kinesiology, which is another healing modality using the soul awareness, the soul centering, which I shared a minute ago, using that as a healing directive, as a healing device, as a healing methodology. So you connect with your soul, and I showed you one way about opening the heart. And once you have that, you have a sense of that, you might anchor it or put your hand on your heart to remember that energy, that awareness, that state of mind, right? So that's the one part of it. And then the other part is that block, whatever the block might be. You know, it could be physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and they're all interconnected. Mm-hmm. They're all interconnected. And you could do the EFT, or you could do the reframing and anchoring with the soul, which is part of spiritual kinesiology. I know that's a lot of terms, and the kinesiology is muscle testing. I'm going to put that aside for now because you don't need that, but that's interesting. But let's just do working with the soul energy, and you could even do it with the miracle reframe too, and bring in the soul energy afterwards. You know, so you can always use that, and amazing things happen when you do. So here's the, I think, pretty extraordinary story. I mean, kind of mind-boggling. Doing this for 30 years, this was one of the more amazing things we experienced. And Jane, my wife, did this. So we were doing a update for our reframing and anchoring our spiritual kinesiology home study course, doing some new videos on the techniques. And one of them is these levels of healing, these ways that people heal physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. They're all connected, right? So this lady at the beginning had this really, it was a few months ago, had a really severe cough. I mean, she could hardly speak, and she was really pale, and she wasn't eating. I mean, she was so ill at the beginning of it. She said she had a severe flu. You know, Jane was, you know, almost worried whether she could even do the process. So anyways, she did the process, and we did the different levels, and we measured them and so forth. And at the end, she had a big shift by doing this healing. Connecting with the soul was sort of the shifting part of it, although there's levels of finding the levels of healing and shifting. But anyways, then she started, the coughing pretty much went away. She had more color. She felt actually hungry. She hadn't eaten about in a week. She had just a lot, and she felt like she was releasing this old energy. At first she was blaming herself. She said, I've done all this healing work, all this spiritual work. Why did I have this severe flu where I can hardly, you know, I don't even feel like living? I mean, she said she wasn't sure she wanted to live at the beginning. That's how serious it was. I mean, it was like something she'd had, I think, for over a week or so, and it was incapacitating. You know, I mean, it was just really a struggle to breathe. I mean, this was really serious. And anyway, afterwards, her energy shifted in this process. It took about 45 minutes, and she felt better. She felt she was releasing this old stuff. She got the message from her soul that she needed to go through this deep stuff to release some deep, old, repressed hurts from long ago, maybe lifetimes ago. Afterwards, she found out afterwards, this was at the very beginning, that she actually had COVID-19, a very severe case of it. And in a couple of days later, she felt fine. She's totally fine now.
Wow. Well, Phil, you know, what I'm getting from this, what I'm getting from this is that, first of all things are possible if you take the time to go into do your inner work instead of always looking for external sources for healing or what's going on in your life. So that's a great story, and I want people to understand that all these things are possible, that you can heal yourself. We all can heal ourselves if we just take the time and put the effort into it. Well, let's go on to the fourth key. So what's the fourth key?
So one key, understanding soul. 2, connecting with soul. 3, expression. Number 4, living your purpose. How do you live it now that I mean, it's all interconnected. It's not quite linear. We know that.
Right.
And I think a good way of summarizing that, or explaining that, should I say, is we came up with what we call a little purpose formula, a formula of how to live your purpose. Now, we know it's not a formula. We know that we know it's not really a formula. However, this is helpful, and I teach this and kind of get people going with it. So I think it will help people watching this. Okay, what's the formula for living your purpose? 1 is, what are you good at? What do you like to do? You know, so that, you know, might take a little thinking, you know, what is it I enjoy? What puts you in the flow? 2, how would you like to help the world? If you could help the world become a better place. I know there's a lot of things we want to help the world, but what really stands out to you? Is it making it a more peaceful place, a more healthy place, a more healing place, a more collaborative place, a more prosperous place. And you can kind of hear by these adjectives, these are little keys of where you might focus. Yes, they're all good. I want to make the world a more prosperous place. Well, then how do your gifts and skills help the world become a more prosperous place? If it's a more healing place, a more loving place, how are things that you enjoy doing? How could that make the world a more loving or healing place? And similarly, a more connected place, whatever it is that you're drawn to. So you kind of sit with this, and it's, in a way, it's there right before you. It might take some doing some trial and error, of course. And, you know, for me, I really enjoyed coaching and healing and teaching, you know, and doing those creative kind of things. And how would I make a living on? I don't know, and you won't know. Oh, Philip, I don't know how to do that. Okay, of course you don't. You haven't done it before, because it's a creative process. So you start to write down what you really enjoy doing. How would I make a living of it? Well, don't worry about that now. Just kind of, how would you like to see, you know, just start to play with it and let it come into being. And then it's just a matter, as you know, Rico, to take your next step.
Yeah, I
That's
totally
living
agree.
your purpose. You got that in mind. You're healing. You're doing the healing work. Like I said, you're understanding your soul. You're connecting with your soul daily. Where are you guided? What's your next step?
That's so good, Phil. I really appreciate that. And yeah, I totally agree. And that's what I've always tried to tell people, you know,
Right.
to find your purpose is just what you said, is to, you know, really be aware of what you really love to do and what you're good at. And if it's serving other people, you know, in a positive way, then that's probably your purpose. So
Right.
that's so
Got it.
good.
Right.
So I want to again, let all of our viewers know that we really encourage you to stay connected to our experts like Phil. He has lots of coaching programs and books and all different kind of things that can really be of value to you.
Freebies too.
Yeah, so there's a PDF that comes along with this video training. So it's got all of Phil's media page in his bio, and he has some gifts for you there, and some offers, and you can just connect and find out all the resources that he has there for you. And that's, well, it's on your PDF, but it's gettingthrough.thru.org. So Phil, that was so good. That I really appreciate it. I think that was really helpful and really beneficial for people.
Great. And really enjoyed it.
I thank you. So I always have one last question for all my experts.
Sure.
And the question is, briefly, what ideas do you have to actually get people to get started and take action on your recommendations?
Right. And I think maybe what I just said last is look for your next step. Where is your next step? I don't know what my next step is, Phil. Well, pose that question. What is possible and what's my next step? And it will appear to you magically, just because what you focus on comes into your vision, into your awareness. You become, there's that famous quote by Rilke, you know, don't worry about finding the answers, just ask the questions, and eventually you will become the answer. You will live the answers.
That's so good, Phil. And it kind of reminds me of Deepak Chopra's thing, is that just put out the intention, have the right intention, and then leave the details to the universe.
Right.
That's so good. Thank you so much. And thank you for watching.